passage and then go into the Tao Te Ching because it was most convenient for both of us, and we want to make sure we knock this out.
Yeah, we're supercharging our brains.
Yeah.
And yours, hopefully.
So I'm going to do a quick Facebook post because I totally forgot to do that. And we will, well, if you want to start reading, you can. I can catch up.
Oh, all right. So we're on chapter 7, what use should we make of diviners? Which, fortune tellers. All right. Because we consult diviners when there is no occasion for us to do so, many of us fail to carry out many appropriate actions. For what can the diviner see besides death or danger or sickness, or in general things of that kind? If it becomes necessary, then, to risk my life for a friend, or if it is appropriate for me even to die for him, what occasion have I to consult a diviner? Have I not the diviner within me, who has told me the true nature of good and evil, and has expounded the signs that indicate both? What further need have I, then, of the entrails of victims or the flight of birds? Can I bear with a diviner when he says, "This is expedient for you"? For does he know what is expedient for me? Does he know what good is? Has he learned the signs that indicate good and evil, as he has learned the signs in the entrails? For if he knows the signs of good and evil, he also knows those of things honorable and shameful and just and unjust. It is up to you to tell me, sir, what is indicated for me, life or death, riches or poverty. But whether these things are expedient or inexpedient, am I going to ask that of you? You don't speak on questions of grammar, do you? And yet you venture to do so here, where all of us go astray and are at variance with one another. It was thus a good answer that the woman made when she wanted to send a boatload of supplies to Gratilla in her exile, and someone said, "Domitian will only take them away again." "I would rather he took them away," she replied, "than that I should fail to send them." What then leads us to consult diviners so constantly? Cowardice? Our fear of what will turn out? That is why we flatter the diviners. Tell me, sir, shall I inherit my father's property? Let us see, let us offer a sacrifice over this. Yes, sir, as a fortune wills. Then, if he says, "You will inherit the property," we give him thanks as if we had received the inheritance from him. And in consequence, they carry on deceiving us. What should we do then? We should come to them without desire or aversion, just as a traveler asks somebody he meets which of 2 roads to take, without having any particular desire to travel on the right-hand road rather than the left. For he does not wish to travel on one of them in particular, but on the one that will lead him to where he wants to go. It is in this way also that we should approach God as a guide, just as we make use of our eyes, not calling on them to show us things of one kind rather than another, but accepting the impressions of whatever they display to us. But now, all of a tremble, we grasp at the reader of bird flights, calling on him as if he were a god, beseeching him, "Have mercy on me, allow that I may come off safe." You, slave, do you wish for anything then, but what is best for you? And is anything better than what seems best to God? Why do you do all you can to corrupt your judge and mislead your counselor?
This is a very pointy letter, or lesson, rather, because these were lectures delivered by Epictetus in public.
Yep.
And transcribed by one of his students. I think Arian, right?
Yeah, Arian, his pupil.
He compiled the discourses and the Enchiridion, which was a distillation of the discourses.
Yeah.
What are... Oh yeah, we got to take some time to circle things.
Yeah.
Where is my pencil? I'm so bad at streaming, dude. Like, I'm like haphazard and shit. It's okay.
Yeah.
Hey, where is my pencil? So what do you make of this lecture on the whole? Like the general thrust of the message?
Sort of like, why are we relying on people who make a living deceiving? It's like a lesson in self-reliance and stuff, being aware of people who just kind of make their living off of not hearsay, but soothsaying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, it's still around today.
You know, because like, I've always sort of, like, I used to do tarot readings. Like, you and I, like, actually met because I did tarot readings.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I've always sort of used them as kind of a Jungian tool, right?
Right.
And, like, my attitude has always been I should never be able to tell you something via the cards that you don't already know. To me, they were kind of like however you interpreted what I'm saying,
yeah,
tells me, the reader, about your life and how you perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
So I was never really into tarot as a fortune-telling tool, in the sense that Epictetus is using the entrails example here, because that was a very common way that the ancient Greeks and Romans, because he was a third, he was part of the third Stoa, which was the Roman Stoa, but
yeah,
the Greeks were sort of subsumed under the Roman Empire at this point.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Like, the way that he's talking about fortune telling, I've never really subscribed to, but I do have experience with people looking at me weirdly because they think I have some kind of special knowledge about the world.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, how you observed that from the outside? Because I have my own reflections based on my personal firsthand experience, but it's different looking at it from
about tarot readings and
the way people would react, when they would come to me for readings. What did you notice most about people observing them?
Okay, during the readings and stuff?
Yeah, during, and what kept them coming back? Did you notice signs of dependence, or just basically?
Well, definitely dependence, because the type of people who would normally come back to you for another reading, let's say, were people who were really indecisive and anxious. They couldn't really come to a decision on their own. And even if you did offer what would be sound advice, I mean, they would never actually apply it. Or their brain would come up with a different question just to keep it going. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by they'd come up with a different question to keep it going? That's
well, in an anxiety-ridden brain, you're always asking yourself repetitious questions.
So then they're just
same, yeah, same.
What about this? What about this? What about this? Constantly,
stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
Or they were people who weren't very introspective in the first place as well. Or both.
Yeah. Estamos de acuerdo, for my Spanish viewers out there. By the way, if y'all have questions and you speak a different language, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I have no control over what happens with this channel in terms of where viewers ultimately come from. So I'll respond in chat, and then I get, if I don't know your language, I guess, I'll type it in chat, and you could use Google Translate. and kind
Yeah.
of get an idea for what I'm saying, and we could just try that. But if you speak Spanish, or like you are deaf and can sign, or you speak Esperanto, like I
Yeah.
try to answer your question in a different language other than English. Uh, if you're from the Philippines, you most likely speak English anyway, but I can like understand Tagalog. I can't speak it to save my life, but yeah. Just to throw that out there. But back to your point,
Yeah.
it was really weird, right? Because people, man, I got really uncomfortable toward the end, right?
Right.
Because it was never my intention to like come off as some sort of like charlatan cold reader, or to like pretend that I had like psychic power. Like, to me, um, these were just a mirror, right? Like, as I'm talking, I'm also watching you.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm giving you my interpretation and asking you basically, how do you feel about what I'm saying in different ways? That's basically my point. How do you feel about what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And based on that, I kind of get a sense for like what you're struggling with, and then I try to give you um, decent advice on like what you can do given what you're telling me about the situation. I like never tried to pretend as though I did something that like no one else could do.
Right.
And it was very weird how even when I was upfront about that, people kept coming back and acting like I knew things that were like incredibly complex about them.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
You know, it's all up here.
what do you attribute that to? Because that weirded me out.
Um. Yeah, I don't know, because psychotherapists sometimes have patients like that that just kind of come back with the same issues. I've been watching the Hannibal TV show, and there was a character who was kind of like that, kind of obsessed with Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
He dies though, but that doesn't happen to like those types of people though, normally. But
Yeah, Hannibal's not the typical example of a therapist for those of you out there.
yeah, but I don't know if it's like dependence or they don't really. It's like it doesn't register up here what you're saying, even though like you both speak English. And there shouldn't be any miscommunication, but miscommunication exists in all levels.
You mean to tell me that even if you speak the same language fluently, you still miscommunicate? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you're right though. From my first-hand point of view, before we get into the Tao Te Ching, Jing. By the way, Booney, if you're out there anywhere, like, and you have any comments on this, I have no idea if you're watching right now. You might be at work. But if you're watching and you have any input on that, like, please throw it in the chat. I love your insights. They're amazing, and they're extremely useful to me. And I think to everybody else, which is why I like reading them on stream.
Yeah.
I really like agree with you that a lot of the people that came back largely fell into the I'm super anxious about life category, and or I lack the ability to introspect well and to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
But there were also a ton of people who were engaged in like heavily schizotypal thinking.
Oh yeah.
And who literally believed that I was some otherworldly enlightened being who could see into their souls.
Yeah. Also, this applies to astrology too.
Oh, dude, I did that too.
Yeah.
And I look at it the same way. I look at planet energies as archetypes in the human mind, and like I try to interpret those in ways that are useful to people.
Yeah, not that fortune telling. Oh, where's my planet at right now?
There's there's this branch of Western astrology called judicial astrology that is entirely focused on predicting events, and I don't ever do that at all. I don't believe in it,
Yeah.
and I think I don't want to alienate people because I know people who are extremely gifted and they're tapped into some shit.
Yeah.
But I largely feel as though that branch of Western astrology is bullshit. And I feel like people often use it to swindle money from their clientele.
Yeah.
And like, in my experience, because like I've talked to professional astrologers before, quote unquote,
Yeah.
and like they're largely pulling from other disciplines when they do a judicial astrology. Like a couple people that I've met who are otherwise really cool people. Like I don't want to disparage anyone,
Yeah.
but they'll admit to me that they're pulling from areas that they've studied personally, like internet marketing or business development, or they've read a lot of self-help books and they understand a lot of common issues that people often go through. So they pull on these patterns and they're kind of putting on this facade.
Yep.
Because to them, like, it makes people more comfortable talking about something to somebody who they feel already knows. I'm personally not sure that's ethical, but that's my own personal stance.
Yeah.
I could very easily do the same thing and choose not to. But that's where I'm at with that.
Right.
Do you have anything else you would like to say about our guide, Epictetus?
I think that's pretty much it. Basically, don't rely on people who do that stuff.
He said something really weird, like later on, which was basically that, like, it's fine if you don't go into it having a preference.
Yeah.
And I think there was some slight recognition that, like, talking to someone that way could prepare you for a potential outcome in the same way that, like, mentally premeditating on adversity by yourself could do if you didn't have that capability.
Yeah.
To generate those scenarios on your own, maybe. But I don't know. I could be reading into it. Like, what do you think?
I actually have a lot of thoughts on this, but I kind of want to get into the Taoism thing because it's a conversation I feel that could be supplemented by the Taoist readings.
So
Yeah,
maybe we'll come back to it after.
Yeah, and if not, well,
we'll do it on a different day. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was actually thinking about this morning.
We'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
Thinking about fortune telling, dependency, and
foresight. Well, specifically, I was thinking about things like foresight, predicting the future in your own mind, and being open to future events by noticing patterns you notice in the present. I don't know. It's some complex stuff.
All right, so if we don't get to that today, if anybody at all is watching, because I'm not looking at stats right now, we will come back to that on another stream, if not after the Tao reading. Yeah, that sounds cool, dude. Yeah. So let me queue up our. What number are we on, by the way?
I think we left off on
32.
Hold on. I think the last one we read was 34, actually, where like it nourishes the 10,000 things, yet is not their lord, has no aim, it is very.
Yes, you're right. So we're on 35.
Yeah.
Thank you. How do I? Okay. Share screen. Chroma tab. And Dao do Jing. Share. And then we make that the spotlight. Like that, right?
Yay. Yep.
Yep. Okay. I guess I'll start first.
Sure.
Um, since you read the Epictetus. Um, all men will come to him who keeps to the one. Um, oops. For there lie the rest in happiness and peace. For there lie rest, happiness, and peace. Uh, Passers-by may stop for music and good food, but a description of the Tao seems without substance or flavor. It cannot be seen, it cannot be heard, and yet it cannot be exhausted. Did I ever tell you about the weird conversation with Dr. Schubert I had along similar lines?
Um, Maybe, but it would be cool to recount it right now.
Oh, well, I was reading like the Tao of Star Wars, which is written by an MD who was like really into Taoism and really into Star Wars. It's a pretty cool introduction for those of you who are interested. Like he combs through the Tao Te Ching and pulls out verses and then explains them through Star Wars mythos. It's pretty dope. And he asked me about the book, and he teaches martial arts. Well, taught. I don't know if he teaches right
Yeah,
now,
I don't know either.
but he taught martial arts in and around UC Davis, right?
Right.
And he was saying, like, hey, you've done martial arts for a lot of life. Uh, I've been having difficulty, like, explaining to students, like, the nature of, like, chi and, like, how that works and, like, why we meditate and why we do Tai Chi before we do Wushu and, like, that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, wow, I think I get what you're saying. Um, and he was like, I was trying to, like, make an analogy, right? About, like impersonal batteries that come from somewhere else and they like help charge you and like personal batteries that get charged by that energy and it just wasn't working. Like how would you explain it to somebody who really liked Star Wars?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and I thought about it for a minute and I said, a Jedi strength flows from the Force. Right?
Right.
And he was like, oh, well, that's kind of perfect. And I was like, yeah, like the way I think of it, right, is like there's a beam of energy that is like there's a membrane of
I
energy.
remember this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured you would remember. There's like this membrane, and like once you become aware of it through martial arts practice or like sitting meditation or whatever, um, there's a weird mental thing that goes on where you can start to pull energy from that instead of expending only your own energy. You know?
Yeah.
Like some people don't believe in chi or whatever, and yeah, okay, I do because like I've had like weird ass experiences where I'm like, yeah, I couldn't have like done that completely on my own. Like,
It's like, oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead, dude.
I was like, it's kind of like when people talk about like prana, like breath.
Yeah, no.
Hinduism. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: prana means breath, but it also means chi.
Yeah, energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember doing research on that stuff.
So like pranayam in
Yeah.
Hinduism is like breathing technique, right?
Mhm.
But like it's also used to channel a certain aspect of mind.
Yeah. It's kind of a roundabout way how I researched all this stuff too.
Oh, you want to talk about that or not?
I was just gonna say, like when I was really young, I was interested in a lot of paranormal phenomena, which is something we also talked about a lot in our friendship years.
You sure did, dude.
But I was interested in like that idea of psychic vampires, people who fed off your energy, and sometimes that led me into like those concepts like prana and chi and all that.
Yeah.
So that's how I know about it, and that's what eventually led me to have an interest in things like Taoism and Zen Buddhism and all that. Nowadays, like I don't really believe, nor do I I'm just kind of in the middle. Like, oh, it might be true, but just as well might not be true.
So you mean after all my tutelage, you don't believe in cheese?
To a certain extent, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, my experiences in meditation have taught me that I should not have any strong opinions one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I kind of do believe in something like that, like a force or a chi,
Yeah.
because, I mean, all right, so scientists like to bag on this type of stuff because we know a lot about how our blood circulates, how we generate our own body heat, and all that, but it's very, very, people have a hard time absorbing that stuff, so stuff like chi and all that is easier to, like, visualize, because it kind of has an effect on your mind.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So there's a Tibetan form of meditation that some monks engage in to actually heat themselves in severely cold weather.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm thinking about.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
like it involves kind of manipulating how your body works.
Yeah, and it's because they've developed such an intense ability to visualize something
Hmm.
that they're capable of focusing to such an extent that they're influencing how their body is functioning.
Yeah. Also, the Wim Hof method is kind of inspired by that.
Oh, dude, yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. And like Wim Hof is not one of those people I would consider like a money hog. Like he actively, for a long time, tried not to make money. And
Yeah.
when he realized like so many people wanted to learn like what he was doing, he just was like,
Mhm.
all right, like I'm gonna make an app and you can subscribe and but it's not a lot of money. And like you can learn the basic technique from him for free on YouTube. So the driving force is not like to make money, but you're absolutely right. The Wim Hof method is very inspired by that. And it's also worth noting that some people have like genetic disposition toward like being less hot or cold depending on where their genetics originate largely from. So if your ancestry comes from like a northern Scandinavian country where it's like super freaking cold,
Yeah.
you are less likely to experience being cold in cold weather. Like your body reacts very differently. Likewise, if
Hmm.
you're a tropical person, like, dude, I can be in 100-degree weather, and as long as you give me some water, like, I don't complain. I'm
Yeah.
happy as you've seen it. Like, it's 100 degrees
Yeah.
outside, and I'm like, I have water, dude, I'm good. I'm a little thrown out on
Yeah.
myself, just drinking it and, like, getting more water. I don't care. And some people,
Yeah. Like, yeah. Go ahead.
oh, go ahead, no. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one of the things that state of mind definitely influences how you react to things like heat and cold.
Yeah.
Because I notice sometimes when I'm like really bored, like let's say at my job, for example, like I get really bored and it's already naturally cold in that building. I start getting a lot colder than if I wasn't bored. It's a kind of a weird thing, but I tend to prefer warm weather,
Yeah,
uh,
because you're Mexican.
regardless. Yeah.
No, I'm not even trying to be like Mexico is like a lot closer to the equator than like northern Canada.
Yeah, and even like Spain and Portugal.
Right. Because they're
So
very like coastal places with a lot of sun. Like
yeah,
we're basically the same kind of person I am genetically for different reasons.
yep.
Uh, yeah, because we do a lot better in warm weather than we do.
Yeah, like I really don't mind 100-degree weather unless like, I was like walking for a time. Although if I had water with me, it really doesn't bother me.
No, same.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's not the temperature that gets to me; it's thirst.
Yeah, and also I think diet can also affect stuff like heat and cold and all that. Like I don't really drink soda anymore, and stuff like that dehydrates you quicker.
What are you talking about? No, you're absolutely right, dude. That's why, well, I don't drink that much soda anymore either.
Yeah, but
'Cause,
I've seen people like walk in 100-degree weather chugging Coke.
dude, yeah, that's a huge freaking mistake.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's cold and it feels refreshing, but like that's really short-lived.
Yes, it is. It surely is.
All right, so we're on 36. I think it's my turn.
Yes.
All right. That which shrinks must first expand. That which fails must first be strong. That which is cast down must first be raised. Before receiving, there must be giving. This is called perception of the nature of things. Soft and weak overcome hard and strong. Fish cannot leave deep waters, and a country's weapons should not be displayed.
Ooh, this reminds me of Bruce Lee so hard.
Yeah,
I just want to throw it up. Um, I just want to throw it up there, but because Bruce Lee was one of my idols growing up,
right.
and Bruce Lee studied Wing Chun for years from Ip Man, and dude said that Bruce Lee was like one of his best students. And hold on. Bruce Lee water quote. All right. Um, hold on. I don't remember. How come it's not showing up? Oh well. Come back to it. But one thing I wanted to say about that was like we talked about this before, how like geological formations and things like that were the result of like change and applied force over long periods of time. And I think like one of the things we can learn from observing nature is how to emulate that sort of persistent yet patient action.
Yeah,
Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. All right. The Tao abides in non-action, yet nothing is left undone. If kings and lords observed this, the 10,000 things would develop naturally. If they still desired to act, they would return to the simplicity of formless substance. Ooh, this is philosophically juicy. Without form, there is no desire. Without desire, there is tranquility. And in this way, all things would be at peace. Um, do you have anything you want to say about this one, my dude?
Yeah, I had a weird image occur in my head as you were reading it.
I thought as much. Go.
Yeah. Without form, there's no desire. Kind of think about like how we have this idea in our minds about certain things, and we think it's going to make us happy or satisfy some need.
Yeah.
But when we learn to realize that it's just a thought in our head and not actually that thing, um, it's easier to to get clarity on a situation or how things actually are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been rereading what's that book called? Emotional Awareness.
Oh,
The
with
conversation.
Dalai Lama and Paul Ekman?
Yeah, yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. I've just been reading it a little bit, and so like one of the ideas they talked about mood and emotion, like moods kind of influence how we see the world when they occur. Like let's say an
Yeah.
irritable mood or euphoric mood. And sometimes we're not really aware of the mood and how it's affecting us, but other people could probably see how that mood is affecting us. Like if we're in an irritable mood, we're already going to be kind of prone to have an angry response to certain situations.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, because that's what I read a little bit this morning. So when you read that, I was like, oh yeah.
Mm.
Um, and in myself too, like I've just noticed, the more aware of what mood I am in, the easier it is to like not give in to certain like undesirable emotions.
Right.
It's interesting because they talked about how euphoric moods are also kind of detrimental.
Like we're talking about like being super ecstatic over something that happened.
Yeah, I have had that recently when I got a new job. So I understand, like, it was affecting how I saw certain things
Yeah.
than if I were just neutral.
Um, Branching off that, like, do you find that taking the time in the morning to do like yoga and sitting meditation um, helps that? And if so, like, how?
Like, helps with,
With the emotional awareness, maybe, or maybe it like brings you to a baseline state where you experience like less initial emotional sway,
okay, I see.
something.
Yeah, I find that it does help a lot. Um, since getting back into it, I have been less and less reactive each day.
Yeah.
Also, during, because I do yoga first and then meditate.
So,
Yeah, and it, there was a day where I just meditated and didn't do yoga, and I noticed there was a subtle difference. Like
talk,
with yoga, oh what?
I was just gonna encourage you to talk about that because, like, yeah,
Yeah, so when I do yoga and then I meditate, I'm not only aware of what's going on in my head, but also like what's going on in my body. Like sometimes I wake up really sore in the morning,
yeah,
and it takes a while. It takes a little bit for my body to wake up, which is how the yoga helps with that. And I just feel like everything flows easier from head to toe, if that makes sense.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, because if you think about biology and how our body works, um, like our muscles and all that need blood circulation, and if you're not really being physically active, doesn't matter if it's like vigorous exercise or yoga or whatever, your state of mind's probably going to be more foggy and like slower to respond to certain things because I've experienced that.
right.
Yeah. Um, so when I meditated without doing yoga, um, I was still aware of what was going on in my mind. It was just my body just felt a little bit more heavy than if I just did yoga first.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna out myself a little bit because, like, I am kind of a stoner, right? Because like I was a Prop 215 patient, a medical marijuana patient, like here in Cali before it went recreational, and like I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. Like I think I was like what 28,
Yeah, I think so.
and like and I was also diagnosed with insomnia because of major depressive disorder. And so like I had been on like Ambien CR, and like Trazodone, and like Xanax for sleep, and like I hated all of them.
Yeah.
And like THC is has been the only thing that works without like making me feel super groggy unless you get like ridiculously high the night before, which is what happened last night. And I noticed that because my body was out of whack, I was a little irritable when I woke up.
Yeah.
And so, like, I did yoga, sat for longer than normal, and then got coffee, and then allowed the coffee to take effect and kind of just sat with like the feeling of the coffee taking effect
Yeah.
for a while. And then, like, I felt okay. But, like, if I wasn't aware of that, like, and that it was different and that it was negatively impacting me, I could have uh, been the kind of person who, like, just snapped at people because I was feeling irritated.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. Like, being able to do yoga and cue into your body, and then, like, that inherently helps cue into, like, what's going on in your head, and then you sit, has profound impacts. By the way, I have that Bruce Lee quote on the screen,
Yep.
and I'm just going to read it real quick. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. If you put water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. And water can flow or it can crash. Be like water, my friend. And, like, that's what I was thinking about when, like, I was thinking about Marcus Aurelius. Like, using a very westernized metaphor for a very Eastern type of idea.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool, and it just so happened that it was super appropriate for today's reading.
Yep. I was gonna add one more thing before we move on.
Yeah, I'm just going to flip back to sharing the Tao Te Ching window. Go ahead.
Even in meditation, I still experience like certain emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more like sitting with them. Yeah, like everything from the physiological precursors to like certain images that might occur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's natural to experience that.
It is. And depending on what tradition a certain meditator or meditation teacher comes from, they may either agree or disagree.
Right.
Just to be aware of that. Specifically, like, I tend to practice like more Zen Buddhist type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, some Hindu traditions kind of disagree with, like, I don't really think Samadhi, Satori, or Kensho, or whatever you want to call it, is like a goal, but some people do, right? And some people say that those feelings are kind of counterproductive, but I see them as a natural byproduct of, like, allowing your mind to be what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it just depends on the person and their point of view.
Exactly.
Cool.
So I think it's my turn.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it is.
Alright, so 38. A truly good man is not aware of his goodness, and is therefore good. A foolish man tries to be good, and is therefore not good. A truly good man does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. A foolish man is always doing, yet much remains to be done. When a truly kind man does something, he leaves nothing undone. When a just man does something, he leaves a great deal to be done. When a disciplinarian does something and no one responds, he rolls up his sleeves in an attempt to enforce order. Therefore, when Tao is lost, there is goodness. When goodness is lost, there is kindness. When kindness is lost, there is justice. When justice is lost, there is ritual. Now ritual is the husk of faith and loyalty, the beginning of confusion. Knowledge of the future is only a flowery trapping of Tao. It is the beginning of folly. Therefore, the truly great man dwells on what is real and not what is on the surface, on the fruit and not the flower. Therefore, accept the one and reject the other.
Oh, that is a few one right there, dude.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? If you have any.
It's
Like,
kind of interesting how, as this verse keeps going, he talks about how, like, when Tao is lost, kindness arises, or goodness, I mean. But then when goodness is lost, there's kindness. It's kind of like when we lose touch with that, you know,
yeah,
whatever that is, the Tao. We start coming up with different concepts of what is good. Um,
hmm, hmm.
yeah. Oh, it's interesting what it said about ritual, and because I feel like there's a lot of ritual in today's world.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, I suppose there were. I suppose it's, you know, ever since the beginning of human civilization, we've been
Yeah,
like that.
you could definitely make that argument,
Yeah,
especially like Neolithic man and the discovery of like early death rituals anthropologically and all that.
yeah. It's very, very intriguing what we've dug up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and like that, like definitely is a really good way of looking at it. Like one thing that I found super interesting, right?
hmm,
When a truly kind man does something, he leaves nothing undone.
yeah,
When a truly just man does something, he leaves a great deal. When a just man
just
does something, he leaves a great deal to be done. And when a disciplinarian does something and no one responds, he rolls up his sleeves and attempts to enforce, in an attempt to enforce order. Like, how do you look at these different kinds of people that seem to be delineated in that part?
how do I look at 'em?
Yeah,
It's kind of weird.
because like I was thinking that maybe like these things are born out of attaching to them to like manifestations of Tao rather than like practicing living in accordance with Tao.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like the concept of justice and stuff is very one-sided.
Right.
Yeah, so leaves a great deal to be done. I mean, yeah, you could accomplish something according to, like, you know, your version of justice or society's version of justice, but there's always like something wanting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the disciplinarian does something and no one responds, and then he resorts to. Yeah, that one I think is more like people who try to control everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like the more you try to control something, like the less control over it you actually have, ironically.
yeah,
And I know that's counterintuitive, but it's been my experience. It goes back to what we were talking about like cultivating the ability to yield when necessary.
right, right. Um, knowledge of the future is only a flowery trapping. I thought that was interesting.
Do you have any experience with what that might mean?
I'm not sure. I guess like expectation, if you know what might happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a less crazy example than what I was going to come up with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Do you got any more thoughts on this?
I do, but they're very weird.
I mean, we could talk about it, unless you don't think they're.
So, I mean, like, I was always a really weird kid, and, like, my mom told me of a very specific instance where um, I stiffened up like she was holding me, and I stiffened up, and according to her, like, I was gone. Like, she tried to get my attention, And
Yeah.
like I was unresponsive, but I was awake. She thought I was having a seizure, but I didn't have any convulsions. And then when I came back, I said, "Mom, Daddy has a hole in his head. I'm crying," but I was not crying any tears.
Hmm.
Physically, like I was just repeating this over and over. And I actually remember seeing that, and like that's how my dad
Yeah.
passed. Um, and like I've had other instances like that where I kind of saw what was going to happen, and it kept happening throughout my life. So when you have weird experiences like that, like you start to think like maybe you're precognitive, right?
Yeah.
Like because you don't have any context for this, and like science doesn't explain this type of phenomenon very well.
Well, yeah. I think part of the reason is some people try to throw it in with like some parapsychology or something.
Right.
And I think that kind of dirties it, if that makes sense. Like it makes it not. It kind of discourages a lot of scientists from actually trying to do
Figure out what's
studies.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the problems with the paranormal sciences is like the accusations of confirmation bias and all that.
Yeah, but I mean that exists in like quote unquote real science too.
Yeah, that too. It's just I think the voices that have a lot of influence over it, like the actual scientists that try to debunk it, like they're so prolific that actual research gets discouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the way I came to understand these things,
Mhm.
like my personal perspective is that like my pattern seeking faculty in my brain is like in overdrive,
Mhm.
and it's well practiced, and it is very good at sniffing patterns.
Yeah.
And so like those things manifest as like visions from the unconscious mind, right?
Yeah. So this is what I was talking about before we switched to the Taoism and what I was thinking about foresight and all that.
Oh dude, I had a feeling.
Yeah, because I remember I've had meditations. This was like years ago too, where there was someone I was like I had a conversation with her, and naturally it was about astrology and all that.
Oh.
But I remember like when I would meditate in the morning around that time, like it was like I was experiencing images of a conversation to come, if that makes sense.
Yes it does to me.
Yeah, like it's not word for word, but the whole context of it and what we talked about was happening in my brain up here during meditation, and then that same day it happened.
Interesting.
And I think part of it was like a connection I was forming with this person, like like an actual like rapport.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like my brain's anticipating it, and I've just found like as I keep meditating, it's more like I'm being aware of what my brain's doing, like putting all these patterns together. Part of it's like some form of desire of me wanting it to happen, but then another part is just kind of like an observer, like let's see what happens, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a balancing act between the two, between
Like
the one that really wants something to happen, and the other is just observing based on all the data.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that is like you've experienced this like living with me for a long time, like that faculty like in me is very damn accurate.
Yeah.
And the way I came to understand it is that my brain is showing me the strongest potential outcomes.
Yeah.
And so instead of investing my emotional self into it,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that when those things happen, because they still do,
Yeah.
they didn't go away because I started meditating. In fact, they got weirder
Mm-hmm.
and stronger. I have to remind myself that this is a perfect opportunity to practice meditating on adversity and not being attached to the outcome, but yet preparing for that.
Yeah, and I think that's what that line sort of means. Like, it could be true, it could happen, but it's like attaching ourselves to the outcome of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And dude, Epictetus would agree with this 100%.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Man, we're reading really slow today, but this is really pretty cool.
Oh yeah. The thoughts are what make it cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good thing I didn't come into this with a goal of reading a certain amount every day.
Right.
We'll finish it when we finish it. Hold on. So we're on 39 and it's my turn, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. These things from ancient times arose from one. The sky is whole and clear. The earth is whole and firm. The spirit is whole and strong. The valley is whole and full. The 10,000 things are whole and alive. Kings and lords are whole. The country is upright. These things are in virtue of wholeness. The clarity of the sky prevents its falling, and the firmness of the earth prevents its splitting, and the strength of spirit prevents its being used up. The fullness of the valley prevents it from running dry. The growth of the 10,000 things prevents their drying out. The leadership of kings prevents the downfall of the country. Hold on, let me scroll. Okay. Therefore, the humble is the root of the noble. Low is the foundation of the high. Princes and lords consider themselves orphaned, widowed, and worthless. Do they not depend on being humble? Too much success is not an advantage. Do not tinkle like jade, or clatter like stone chimes. And that's really cool. Therefore, the humble is the root of the noble. So, this goes back to the general philosophical idea, or this sort of sub branch of philosophy generally, called virtue ethics, right? Where whatever virtue is defined in that philosophical system that you're specifically studying, its main concern is virtue according to that school of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Taoism, in a way, could be considered a form of virtue ethics because it seems to place a lot of importance on your internal state rather than your external needs, if that makes sense. Do not tinkle like jade or clatter like stone chimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too much success is not an advantage. And Lao Tzu has talked about this in a different way previously. The more ostentatious you are, there's this sense that the further you are from the experience of Tao.
Yeah. I kind of think of it like you're made of glass and you're shiny and all that, but you're very brittle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you're made of gold and easily trampled.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. Man, how do you get the really short one?
You want to trade?
You want to read the next, after this one, read the next two?
Yeah.
Okay. Returning is the motion of the Tao, Yielding is the way of the Tao. The 10,000 things are born of being, and being is born of not being. Man, so short and yet like very zen.
Oh yeah.
Uh, this reminds me of morning meditation and how I got out of my weird little like 30-minute funk. Like just kind of returning to that whole like, okay, this is your mind still.
Right.
Being is born of not being. I mean, like I was saying, like I think yesterday, like I don't look at the void as a place of despair philosophically. I look at it as a place of infinite possibility
Yep.
and weird probability. Like just because things are possible doesn't mean they're necessarily likely. But like being aware that like things outside of what is likely are still possible
Mm-hmm.
keeps you from like attaching yourself to one specific outcome or manifestation of something.
That's exactly how I look at the void.
Dope. It's kind of weird because like I don't think people realize like you basically learned this crap from me.
Yeah. Well, I've done my own reading and
Since then, of
had
course,
experiences and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, because they're dude, like you remember those long conversations we used to have before you actually got into like doing meditation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of this shit is really unexplainable. Like you
Well,
can't,
yeah. You really have to experience it. Like sometimes I experience it not even during meditation, but when I'm outside and just looking at nature.
yeah, like I remember like some of the most profound experiences I've had recently have been like when I'm just walking around the neighborhood.
Right.
If you know you want to be an asshole, like I'm rolling around the neighborhood because I use a wheelchair, but you know, yeah. But and so you're up for the next couple.
All right. The wise student hears of the Tao and practices it diligently. The average student hears of the Tao and gives it thought now and again. The foolish student hears of the Tao and laughs aloud. If there were no laughter, the Tao would not be what it is. Hence it is said, the bright path seems dim, going forward seems like retreat. The easy way seems hard, the highest virtue seems empty. Great purity seems sullied, a wealth of virtue seems inadequate. The strength of virtue seems frail, real virtue seems unreal. The perfect square has no corners, great talents ripen late. The highest notes are hard to hear, the greatest form has no shape. The Tao is hidden and without name. The Tao alone nourishes and brings everything to fulfillment.
Man, that's a difficult one to parse for people.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a way to approach it, and one is not happening for me currently. Do you have anything, or should we just move forward? Don't force it.
Some of it's kind of Zen-like to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If y'all want me to attempt to teach you to meditate, I can't guarantee I can teach you to meditate over stream. But if anybody's ever interested, I mean, you can hit me up and I could try.
Yeah.
I've never done it that way. Like I've only done person to person, but I'm willing to give it a shot. But like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the best way to encompass that is like, a lot of it seems very Zen.
Mm-hmm.
The way I like to think of it is right, like the fundamental Taoist point of view is like they don't use labels like yin and yang don't really mean what they're commonly translated as. It doesn't mean good and bad. It doesn't mean like evil versus like virtue. It doesn't mean like masculine and feminine, but then it does.
Yeah.
because the thing about it is, it encompasses everything that we conceive of as being polar opposites, but they coexist.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, and that's the best I can do to try to explain this.
Yeah.
And, like, without both aspects of life, however we look at these dichotomies, life and existence would not be what it is. It would be hollow.
Right.
Without, like, the hardships that I've been through, dude, like, I would not be able to look at life the way that I've come to look at it.
Right.
Because I would be a brittle person incapable of like, dealing. And, like, a lot of what we've both been through has been difficult for us, but for us, like, the ability to, like, reflect
Mm-hmm.
and recontextualize and reframe some of these really difficult experiences is what gives us the ability to, like, be what we are now.
Right.
That's, like, the best way. Like, those two things are the best way that I know how to contextualize this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. I'm sorry, dudes. This is the best I could do.
Yeah. All right, my turn.
Yeah.
The Tao begot one, one begot two, two begot three, and three begot the 10,000 things. The 10,000 things carry yin and embrace yang. They achieve harmony by combining these forces. Men hate to be orphaned, widowed, or worthless, but this is how kings and lords describe themselves. For one gains by losing, and loses by gaining. What others teach, I also teach. That is, a violent man will die a violent death. This will be the essence of my teaching.
Dude, we literally just talked about this.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing how that happens as you're reading the book. It just gives me, like, confirmation bias that the Tao is a thing.
Right.
I don't care if it's confirmation bias because it's psychologically functional and William James would be fine with that. Yeah, I don't have much to say except that, like, I think it's really interesting. Like, so like, the two things I want to point out for people is, like, one begot two, two begot three, and three begot the 10,000 things.
Yeah.
This is a general, like, Taoist way of expressing how concepts and manifestations come into being. Like, things just keep being divided and divided and divided until we have, like, everything that we see and think.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I find interesting is, like, and I haven't really come to any conclusions, like, men hate to be orphaned, widowed, or worthless.
Yeah.
This is how rulers and lords describe themselves. And so, like, in Europe, this seems like a very weird thing because, like, often we have this history of, like, ostentatious lords, and the same thing is true in Asia.
Yeah.
But I think, like, Lao Tzu might be doing a thing that the Stoics did, where they imagine, like, a ruler or some kind of wise figure, right? In Stoicism, that gets termed as the Stoic sage.
Yeah.
In Lao Tzu specifically, he tends to talk about these things, like when he says a ruler, right, or a lord, he's talking about the Taoist ideal of a ruler or lord.
Right.
And, like, he also talks about the sage.
Yep.
So these are, like, the sage isn't necessarily a king, but he thinks that kings ought to have these sagely tendencies and be able to manifest them in kingly ways to
Right.
save the kingdom. A little bit of academia, but, like, I think some of that is necessary.
All right. I believe it's your turn.
Again, yeah, it is. The softest thing in the universe overcomes the hardest thing in the universe. This is the Bruce Lee quote.
Mm-hmm.
That without substance can enter where there is no room. And hence I know the value of non-action, teaching without words and work without doing, and are understood by very few. I have a question.
What's up?
Uh, well, two. A, what time do you need to be off stream? And B, would you like to talk about Wei Wu Wei?
So first question, first answer, I would say I should get off stream right after we talk about Wu Wei, because I do want to talk about that.
Okay. Well, so that answers both questions. That's
Yeah. That was a very Taoist response of me. No.
That was my way of phrasing those two questions.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Yeah, go have. Let's talk about Wei Wu Wei.
Yeah, doing without non-doing.
Well, like, okay, you hit on a very important thing by accident, right? Because like, it's hard to translate that.
Yeah, it is.
So, like,
There were. Oh, what?
just for somebody that's never heard of Wei Wu Wei or Wu Wei or like
Yeah.
non-doing or doing by non-doing or non-action or action without action, like, um, what are some ways you've seen it translated? If there are any ways that like I didn't mention.
I think I don't know. Those are the ones I tend to know. I don't know
That's fair.
other ones. If there are, let us know.
So like,
Whoever's watching.
like if you're watching this on YouTube as an archived video, please comment down below.
Yeah, I would like to know because, like, yeah.
And
But
if,
anyway,
if you're literally a Taoist, like, come tell me things that I can then share with other people, because like my knowledge of Taoism specifically is not abundant.
yeah. I can talk about experiences of it that I feel like I've had.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
first of all, like, why does it seem like Wu Wei is a logical contradiction, and why is it being a logical contradiction a weirdly like logical thing?
Yeah, that's a lot of words. So I think part of it is like our use of language. Because when we say like we're doing something, it implies that, we're doing it. Like, let's say I'm at my job, for example, where I have to interact with people and sell them things and all that. I used to work at a grocery store as well, so it was the same thing. And when we're doing something, this is what I've noticed with other people and in myself, we're actually not present in that moment, and we're kind of like on autopilot. And also, we're kind of like lost in these anxious loops in our heads. So, and that kind of ties back into like being aware of your emotions and all that. Because, alright, so I'm going to describe what I feel like was a Wei Wu Wei experience, or, doing without non-doing.
Go for it.
Is, there were certain times, like I like to write short stories and poetry, and when I first started doing stuff like that, I was obsessed with how it looked, with how it sounded, what was going on up here in my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
All these things were distracting me from actually creating, and it's gonna sound weird too, because I did finish certain projects, but I never felt satisfied by them, or I just thought they were, kind of worthless, and I didn't really share them. But I've had experiences, and they're becoming more common now, where I just write something and I'm like completely involved in that moment, and it's like seemingly without effort too. And I've also experienced it in my daily life, where I'm going about my daily routine, where I'm not actually thinking about anything, and I'm just doing my routine as I normally would, like, getting coffee and all that. It's very hard to describe, though.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, because it's not like there's a voice up here.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, this is gonna sound like some mystical bullshit to some of you,
Mm-hmm.
but like, there comes a point when you learn. Like, I'm not saying like neither of us are freaking enlightened beings. Okay,
Hell no.
I'm gonna make that super duper clear.
Far from it.
Like, no matter what spiritual crap you hear us say on stream, I'm not enlightened.
Me neither.
You are not enlightened. I can't.
Nope.
You're not enlightened. I'm not enlightened. And like, I don't like the term.
Yes.
I think whatever you call enlightenment, it comes in moments.
Mm-hmm.
And when you learn to recognize those moments, it's similar to what science currently terms transient hypofrontality, or the common term for it is flow state. But like, okay, so it's not exactly flow state, but that's the closest thing I got with science words.
Yeah.
So what happens during flow state is that um, your prefrontal cortex becomes less active, and your default mode network quiets itself, and you are completely and utterly engrossed in whatever you are doing.
Yes.
Right? Like runners, like high performance athletes experience this while they're running in competition sometimes. What you're describing happens to other poets where they feel, and this is where some of the automatic writing phenomenon during the spiritualism movement probably came from, is because somebody like experienced a thing where they felt like they were channeling somebody and then they wrote shit that they didn't remember because
Yep.
they were totally engrossed only in the act of writing, and they don't understand where those thoughts came from.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost certain some of those phenomenon were born of that experience. Or phenomena. Yeah. Nah. I can English. Um, and so to like kind of give people a reference framework, there was this discussion we had in like Dr. Schubert's intro to classical East Asian philosophy, as he enjoyed terming the class because he felt it more accurate. Um, where we were talking about Wei Wu Wei and the story of Good Cook Ding. Do you recall?
Yes.
Do you kind of want to talk about that story real quick?
Sure. I think it's applicable here.
So, like, what's the story, if you remember? I can tell it if you don't.
Yeah, I was hoping you would tell it
Okay.
because I don't want to mess it up.
Dang, dude, this is like you're depending on my philosophy brain. So there was this, I'm gonna mess it up, right? Because I'm basically retelling. I'm not reading it to you from somebody's translation. But there was this dude, and his name, he was a cook. And like he was preparing some dope food for like this royal banquet.
Yep.
And the king and the court were so impressed with this dude's ability to carve and cook. And they were like, Cook Ding, how in the hell do you make such good food? And he was like, well, in the beginning I sucked. When I was carving an ox, I would just see parts of an ox and I would like force my blade through it. I would ham-fistedly cook it, and I guess it turned out okay, and sometimes it turned out awful. But like, I listened to the dude who was teaching me. I learned his ways. And at some point, I stopped seeing the ox as components, and I just started to feel where I should cut and how I should prepare. And so, like, and that's basically the story, right?
Yep.
And what that made us think about in class is now you can start to talk about that because do you remember?
In class.
Yeah, dual natures. Sound familiar?
Yeah, I need some help.
All right. I remember all of it, like the whole thing. Um, and so there's Tao, right? Like inborn nature, like the thing you just have, and then there's a different Tao. There's like a another layer
Yeah,
where you can acquire, and we would call that in the West like going from being an apprentice to being a journeyman to being a master at something, right? So it's
right.
levels of competency that then become what we term here second nature.
Yeah,
And so Cook Ding is telling you about his experience of being a student and then becoming sort of competent to becoming competent. And like, so you go from conscious incompetence, like you suck and you know you suck.
yeah,
And then you get to a level where you're like consciously like okay, so first you suck and then you don't know you suck, and then somebody points out that you suck, and then
yeah,
they teach you, and then you start to realize that you suck, and then you learn from the person, and then from there you go from like conscious competent, like you go to conscious competence, like you've
yeah,
practiced and you can like look at the ox and you could be like, okay, I'm supposed to cut here, oh that was a good job, oh I'm supposed to cut here, that was a good job, this is how I cook it, blah blah blah. And then at a certain point you become unconsciously competent, and that is the point at which we would typically call that mastery.
yep,
And so that is when you acquire a second Tao of sorts. We call it unconscious competence or mastery in the West. Um, and like that is the whole. And at that point is when you start to experience like more Wei Wu Wei in what you're doing, because you no longer have to think about how best to do something. It just feels like it flows from you, like a Jedi's strength flows from the Force.
yeah. I've read similar stuff in the Hagakure, which is, the Book of the Samurai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying that's what it is. Like I would apply that in, like, let's say when I was working at the grocery store, which is it can be fast paced, and conscious thinking. Like I couldn't rely on that.
Right, because there's no time.
Although I was aware of people who were, and it's weird because it's not like I was on autopilot. It was just my body just knew what to do, and my mind was just like, all right, this is the objective, and here's how to get it. Or, here's how to complete it. But it wasn't like I set a goal and then I was like, okay, time to like grab these cans and put them on the bottom of the bag because I don't want to crush their eggs. No, it was just, automatic.
Right, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so small, but if you apply it to even tiny stuff like that, you find that it starts building. It's like a way of life, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a pretty. Well, so, do you feel like that's what happened to you with poetry, or do you think
Yeah,
that
I feel like that's how it was. It's like getting my mind off of those larger, even unrealistically idealistic goals and just focusing on small stuff.
And then from there, you learn to focus on the feeling.
Yeah, like I use my left hand more than when I was a kid because I just started using it more. Mostly because I wanted to, but it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so yeah, that's my experience with it. And I feel like I should get off stream very soon.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. So that's gonna be our stream for today, dudes, because we both have to go do things. So we will. When's the next time we're gonna do that?
Tomorrow's Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Shoot. Are you gonna do it tomorrow?
Well, it's partially up to you, dude.
Oh, well, I'm off later in the afternoon tomorrow. So,
Would Wednesday be better?
Yeah, 'cause that's an early day for me. So we could pick this up on Wednesday.
Okay. Oh, and by the way, dudes, like in general, like if dude has a day off and we're kicking it, we're not gonna be doing this because, like, yeah, we're just gonna be kicking it.
Yeah.
Kick it time. All right, dude. Have a good day at work, and
Yep.
we'll pick this up on Tuesday. We'll do Epictetus offline or off the internet.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys Wednesday.
Yeah. See you then.